And thank you. Welcome to Hannity. You will not believe what we're about to tell you tonight. It'll take the full hour. Twice demoted DOJ Bruce Ohr was grilled by Republican lawmakers for 7 hours behind closed doors earlier today. The information he revealed is tonight blowing this case wide open in terms of a fraud that was committed multiple times against the FISC court, all to get Donald Trump and his campaign and undermine his presidency. Everyone who signed off on these FISA requests signed off on fraudulent documents, and they knew they were fraudulent. Now, you won't hear this information anywhere else. Of course, your media is obsessed with hating Trump. But in minutes, we're going to tell you everything you need to know about Bruce Ohr's testimony today, including damning new revelations surrounding the rampant abuse of power in our FISA court system. What we're about to reveal should rock the country to its core. And also tonight, we have a breaking new report from John Solomon about a clear case of actual, real, with proof, Russian collusion, connecting the dots between Bruce Ohr, the DOJ, and a Putin-linked Russian oligarch. It happened. Robert Mueller, where are you? Jeff Sessions, pay attention. Now, we'll cover all the latest sad examples of actual fake news from CNN, one of their key sources. Cohen attorney Lanny Davis was feeding them a bill of lies. He says it wasn't true. He's completely backtracked about his claims related to Trump-Russia collusion, but CNN stands by their tainted reporting. Amazing. And coming up, I have a message for fake news CNN and their media reporters. They watch this show because it's more interesting. Maybe they need to watch their own network. And a strong new economic indicator, more evidence that the economy is just blowing it through the roof. All of that, plus we are tracking primary races in multiple states. Now, just moments ago, it was announced that Fox News is projecting that Trump ally Ron DeSantis will win the Republican primary for Florida governor, and Fox News is projecting that Governor Rick Scott, who's done a great job in Florida, he will win the GOP Senate primary, and he will be going up against Bill Nelson. We'll bring you the results as we have them. All right, but first, sit tight, buckle up. Time for our jam-packed opening monologue edition. All right, tonight we are blowing this case about Bruce Ohr, FISA abuse, wide open. I've been on the phone with sources all day and all night, people who are in the room during Ohr's testimony. We did learn today that Bruce Ohr said that he understood the Steele dossier would never have been accepted in a court of law. He understood it. We have 65 pages of notes and texts, and then meetings between him and Christopher Steele. He said the FBI knew about the seedy relationship with Steele. So much to cover. Stay with us. We'll break it wide open. But there's no doubt that a conspiracy to commit fraud against FISA court judges did, in fact, take place. Now, let's dive into the testimony from Bruce Ohr today. Now, remember, he is the twice-demoted DOJ official who went to a hearing. Bruce Ohr was grilled on the Hill by members of the House Oversight and the Judiciary Committees for 7 hours. Now, the crucial issue at play here is rampant FISA abuse surrounding Christopher Steele's dirty dossier with Russian lies that Hillary Clinton illegally funneled through a law firm into Fusion GPS, hiring then Christopher Steele. Now, our sources say that that topic was front and center at the hearing today. Get this. Sarah Carter is now reporting, she'll join us later, that we now know that the FBI was aware of Steele's blatant and extreme anti-Trump bias before they used his dossier as the Donald Trump not being president of the United States. Sounds just like Carter, just like Page and Strzok. And Sarah Carter also reporting that today's hearing proved that the FBI was using Bruce Ohr as a back channel for Steele's anti-Trump intel, even after the FBI cut all formal ties with Christopher Steele over trust issues. And he's saying that the FBI knew everything. And despite this, Congressman John Ratcliffe, who was a part of today's hearing, is telling us that Ohr was not mentioned in any of the FBI FISA applications against a Trump campaign associate. Now, Congressman Ratcliffe, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, and John Solomon will all be with us tonight. This is yet another sign of the FBI's blatant effort to hide the true nature of Clinton's bought and paid for Steele's dirty Russian dossier. It was campaign op research. It was compromised. It was never verified or corroborated. It turned out to be lies, Russian lies, funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. They funneled the money through a law firm, hiring Fusion GPS, that then hired Christopher Steele, an ex-foreign spy that had really seedy Russian connections, we now know, who was working with and for Fusion GPS. And by the way, was also on the FBI payroll. This is really the cherry on the top. He was working with Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie Orr. The Orrs were literally profiting off their relationship with Christopher Steele. Orr said today that he disclosed that to the FBI. Really? And the FBI was okay with that? Now, at the end, this is where we are. We now know for a fact that in 4 separate FISA court applications, FISA court judges were repeatedly lied to, knowingly lied to. The American people, you were all lied to, all in an effort by high-ranking government bureaucrats to steal, sway, rob an election, and at all costs stop Donald Trump from winning and then to destroy his presidency. Now, communications between Orr and Christopher Steele, 60-some-odd pages of it. It shows that Steele was extremely concerned about being exposed for this, and for good reason, because this level of corruption and abuse should make every single American citizen sick. A blatant example of what I've been telling you, a 2-tier justice system. Hillary Clinton gets a free pass. Trump is literally targeted by our government with her salacious, phony campaign op research put together by a foreign national using Russian sources, took it right out of the hands of the field offices and twisted the facts, softened the language, exonerated Clinton, rigged her investigation from the very beginning. There really never was an investigation. Clinton was never going to be found guilty because she was the favored candidate. And meanwhile, the FBI, the Department of Justice, they worked hand in hand with ex-foreign spy Christopher Steele to use his phony lies to open an investigation into allegedly Trump-Russia collusion. They gained these FISA warrants illegally against a Trump campaign associate. They potentially leaked that information. We know they leaked it to the general public to sway opinion with lies. This is the stuff that happened in the former Soviet Union. All of this despite everybody knowing, including Orr admitting today, that Steele's shady past, that his work for the Clinton campaign, that his blatant bias against Trump, that his leaks to the press, that he was let go by the FBI, that was also standing by and literally doing nothing to fix what is clearly a horrific inequality in our justice system. Now, today, Senator Lindsey Graham, he summed it up best. Let's take a look.
Word of caution to the public. A lot of people have tried and convicted President Trump. Don't be so fast. I've seen no evidence of collusion after 2 years. Mueller's looking at it. We'll see what he says. Plenty of corruption in the Department of Justice and the FBI. Should be stunning. Not one Democrat seems to care. Reverse the roles.
What corruption? What do you mean?
Well, okay, just imagine if the Republican Party had hired a foreign agent to go to Russia to get dirt on Hillary Clinton, and they used it to get a warrant and never told the court it's our job to stop Trump. Can you imagine what would happen if it's our job to stop Clinton?
Now, we have a lot of breaking news tonight right here in this program. In other words, we do have news to break as it relates to Russian collusion. It's been found. I know Robert Mueller cares about taxicab medallions and old income tax reports and loan applications. Maybe Mr. Mueller should take note of what we're reporting tonight, because we have a new report from John Solomon. Follow the bouncing ball. Bruce Orr, the DOJ, closely working with a Putin-linked Russian oligarch for years. And most recently, the FBI tried to squeeze the oligarch for information surrounding Trump-Russia collusion, including a theory that Paul Manafort was leading Trump campaign's collusion efforts. By the way, he'd been into a lawsuit with Paul Manafort, and even he said that's ridiculous. It's absurd. And according to Solomon, the oligarch actually used the word preposterous. Now, think about this. This is the same Russian oligarch that the U.S. won't even allow into the country. He met with Bruce Orr. He met with other top officials. You've got to be kidding me. How much more insane does this get? You cannot make this up. We reached out to Orr, the DOJ, the Russian oligarch involved. Of course, we didn't get a response. We're going to have a lot more on all of these issues. All of the key players are joining us tonight. But meanwhile, the biggest cheerleader of Trump-Russia collusion has been caught red-handed yet again, reporting fake news to you, the American people. In July, fake news CNN, they broke a huge bombshell story detailing shocking evidence about Trump's involvement in the now infamous 2016 Trump Tower meeting. We've got the tape to remind you.
Well, Chris, tonight, sources with knowledge tell myself and Carl that Michael Cohen claims that then-candidate Donald Trump knew in advance about the June 2016 meeting in Trump Tower in which Russians were expected to offer his campaign dirt on Hillary Clinton. Crucially, these sources tell us that Cohen is willing to make that assertion to the special counsel Robert Mueller.
It's very, very significant because the president has denied any foreknowledge of this event, and this meeting goes to the question of intent to collude.
You've been saying for a year that we need to follow the money, follow the lies, and figure out this cover-up. So how did you do it in this case? Talk us about how you got this reporting.
Well, I talked to sources. Cohen was saying that Donald Trump, the candidate for president of the United States at the time, had authorized the go-ahead for that meeting to take place with his son.
More Humpty Dumpty CNN fake news. And according to BuzzFeed, one of the unnamed sources in the report was Cohen attorney Lanny Davis. He's now completely backtracking on his claims to fake news CNN. He says that his client, in fact, does not have information of Trump's knowledge of the 2016 Trump Tower meeting. He's saying that CNN's anonymous sources, including himself, we were wrong. And after all, Michael Cohen testified under oath. This is all coming out, that he had no knowledge of Trump's involvement in that meeting or anything else. And we also have a new wrinkle in the story. When CNN published their, quote, bombshell report, they wrote that Lanny Davis declined to comment in an article where he was the primary source. That's fake news at its worst. Now, tonight, CNN is actually laughably standing by that horribly flawed story. Spokesperson even said to us they are confident in their phony reporting. It seems like a perfect story for some members, media reporters at CNN, but I guess they're probably too busy watching this show every night because they can't even watch their fake news network and their own terrible reporting that comes from them every day. Now, the debacle surrounding Lanny Davis is just the latest in a long line of faulty reporting from fake news CNN. 2017, 3 CNN employees resigned after a fake story about our friend Anthony Scaramucci. A few months later, CNN was slammed and publicly embarrassed over a fake report about Donald Trump Jr. And let's never forget CNN's fake reporting over President Trump. Remember when he was with the Japanese prime minister and they were feeding the fish? Now, since the very moment Donald Trump announced his run for office, CNN has been blinded by their hatred. And now, while the network ramps up this crazy rhetoric and faulty reporting to destroy the president, the country's actually improving by leaps and bounds. Stock market breaking new records. We're seeing historic low levels of unemployment in 14 states. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, women in the workforce, youth unemployment, a 52-year low. And now we have more great news that they'll never report. Consumer confidence today closing at an 18-year high. So much more good news to report on the economic front. We'll get to all of that. Joining us now, more information on Bruce Orr's testimony. He is Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe, and from the Hill, John Solomon. We'll start with you, Congressman. Let us talk about what we learned today. Is it true? Did Bruce Orr ever testify before Robert Mueller? Did that come up today?
It did come up, Sean. I have to be careful. I know your viewers want information, but there's a confidentiality agreement. But you have good sources. I listened to your monologue, and you're on track with respect to.
Well, I heard he never testified to Robert Mueller, and you're smiling, so I'm guessing that's a good guess. Now, John, wouldn't that mean a lot if he didn't testify before Mueller, considering what we have 60 some odd pages of notes, all the meetings, and the fact that he said under testimony today that in fact this Steele dossier could never be used in a court of law, but it was used as the basis for a FISA warrant to get FISA court approval on spying on Americans?
I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
I didn't know which John you were talking to.
I'll ask John Solomon first. John Solomon.
Sorry, sir. Yeah. Listen, many of the members I talked to said they thought that was one of the most important revelations today, that Bruce Orr said he's never heard, nor has his wife ever heard from Special Counsel Mueller. If Mueller wanted to get to the bottom of this, the questions that Congress has raised that are now in the public, whether the FISA warrant was legitimate and the origins of this investigation were legitimate, you would think at the very least he'd want to talk to Bruce Orr and find out why was he playing the intermediary role. I was told today emphatically Bruce Orr has said he was never interviewed. I think that raises a lot of questions for people in Congress. What is Bob Mueller really up to?
He worked, now we have 63 pages of text, emails, and handwritten notes, Congressman, between Orr and Steele. Steele had already been fired for lying and leaking. He got paid not only by Clinton through Fusion GPS and the DNC through Fusion GPS, but he also was on the record as hating Donald Trump, saying he was desperate that Trump not get elected and passionate about him not being president. Did he comment on any of that today?
He did. I can probably summarize it the best way like this, Sean. When the Department of Justice walks into the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and says, we want a warrant to spy on an American citizen, and the central piece of our evidence in our case is a dossier, there's an obligation to say, oh, and by the way, the number 4 person in our organization and his wife had major prominent operational roles with respect to how that dossier was put together, how the FBI received it, and by the way, they were paid handsomely by third parties for that. Those are what we call material facts. They're material facts that have to be disclosed, and in this case, they weren't.
But he said today, as I understand it, that in fact he told the FBI that his wife had put this together, and they still used him as a back channel. So they never told the FISA court that piece of evidence. They never told the FISA court who paid for the dossier. So the only conclusion is now we know, it's irrefutable at this point, that the FISA court was repeatedly lied to in 4 separate FISA applications. Is that a true statement?
Well, here's what he said, or here's what I can tell you about his testimony today. My real question walking in, Sean, was what did the FBI and the Department of Justice know about Bruce Orr and his wife?
The FBI knew, I'm told.
His testimony today was that he gave us a list of a half a dozen senior FBI and Department of Justice officials that he told of his involvement, his wife's involvement, all of the details of their interactions with Christopher Steele, with Glenn Simpson, with the payment. And these are names, Sean, that would be familiar to you. I've heard you say some of these names on your program before. And I can tell you, as someone that has reviewed the FISA applications, the unredacted versions, I can't talk about what's in there, but I can tell you what's not in there. And what's not in there is any information about Nellie and Bruce Orr.
Well, so basically, I want to go back to my question, though. The FISA, a fraud was committed multiple times on a FISA court. They purposely withheld information to the court as it relates to if the FBI knew that, in fact, Steele, that it, in fact, put this together and that he'd never verified it, and if they never told the court that Hillary paid for it, isn't that a fraud committed on the court? Isn't that lying to a court?
If Bruce Orr's testimony today was truthful and accurate, then what you're saying about the information that was not submitted to the FISA court and should have been, it's a big problem.
A big problem, or is it against the law to lie to a court?
Well, as a former officer of the court, you have an obligation to have a full and complete disclosure of facts. And
if I lied to the court, do you think you could get me out of prison?
Hey, there is nothing more sacrosanct than Americans' civil liberties.
Right.
And so what we're talking about here,
I wouldn't think of it. I pay my, just like you pay your taxes. Do it. Just do it.
If I were one of those folks that were identified today, and I can tell you that in at least one case, one of the names that he identified for us today signed one of those FISA applications, I'd retain a really good lawyer.
I think his name's J.C., but I'm just guessing. There's one of them anyway. Thank you, Congressman, for being with us. John Solomon, let's go to your breaking report because you go into great detail. Here we have, you tie it all together as it relates to this Russian oligarch and Bruce Orr and Steele and the Department of Justice. I'll let you give a summary of this report.
Yeah, listen, the FBI had a 10-year relationship with Oleg Deripaska, the head of the largest aluminum company in Russia. He funded a $25 million rescue mission for the FBI to try to rescue a former agent. That's a good thing. In 2015, Orr showed up and asked him some questions about organized crime in Russia. He tried to give him some guidance. In 2016, a more consequential event occurred. The FBI showed up in September 2016, 1 month before the FISA application, and they said, listen, we think Paul Manafort is colluding with Russia to help Trump win the election. We now know where they got that information. They got it from Christopher Steele. That's in his dossier. And Deripaska tells him, a trusted guy who's been with him, helping him for 10 years, I'm telling you, it's preposterous. It's not happening. You got it wrong.
You wrote in this piece that collusion occurred, Russian collusion. Yeah. And you tell a tale of Orr, Steele, Deripaska, the FBI, and DOJ. Tie it all together so everybody understands completely.
You know, we talk about any contact with Russia must be terrible. Well, the FBI had lots of contacts with Russians, and many times they got benefit from it, right? They got help in trying to locate a former agent. They got information waving them off, bad intelligence. But here's the real problem with collusion that goes into the FISA warrant. When Deripaska tells them, hey, you're wrong about Manafort, I can tell you, you're wrong about Manafort, they had an obligation a month later to go to the court and say, well, listen, Steele's telling us this, but this Russian guy we've had a lot of good record with, he's telling us something different. There's no evidence that occurred. Another thing that Steele...
and by the way, Deripaska's, this is not just any oligarch. This is a friend of Putin's. This is a guy that frequently appeared with Putin.
If you look at video clips, you'll see him in many of the clips with Putin when there were public meetings. He's a very powerful man.
So it's interesting that all of these other players, Bruce Orr, others, they're all meeting with Deripaska, who's friends with Putin. This is supposed to be about collusion, and we're talking about taxi medallions and bank loan applications now.
For people who are frustrated by the case, they see this double standard, right? Democrats can collude with the Russians, get whatever information they need. They can buy it. They can hire a British intelligence guy. But when Republicans have a meeting with a Russian, it suddenly sounds like it's criminal. Yeah. That's been what's frustrated people so much about the unfairness and the telling of this story so far.
Congressman, we'll give you the last word on this tonight.
Well, as a former federal prosecutor, I got to tell you, what I heard today in Bruce Orr's testimony was shocking, alarming, and disappointing. These types of things didn't happen in the Justice Department where I worked, and you know.
Let me ask the question another way, Congressman. We're running out of time. You're a former prosecutor, and
yes, sir.
I have a lot of respect for prosecutors. It's a hard job, especially people that don't go on witch hunts and they believe in equal justice under the law. Is there anybody that could do what happened here that's watching this show tonight that could omit purposely key information in an application to get a warrant to spy on, in this case, an opposition party campaign associate in the lead up to an election and not be arrested and put in jail? Those people that put their name on those FISA warrant applications, aren't they swearing by the truthfulness, the veracity of those applications? And if they knowingly withhold information in those applications, aren't they really, isn't this premeditated fraud on a court? Everybody that signed them, did they commit fraud on a court?
My opinion on this is, Sean, that there's a guy named John Huber, who's been, he's the U.S. Attorney for Utah, who's been tasked by Jeff Sessions to investigate FISA abuse. Well, my recommendation to Mr. Huber would be for him to contact my office and ask for a copy of the transcript of Bruce Orr, and I'll make his job a lot easier.
Can I have a copy of it?
Not yet.
Okay. But thank you, Congressman. We appreciate it.
Bet.
John Solomon, great reporting. We're going to stay on this. First, we do have a Fox News alert. Fox News has another race to call, and tonight on this busy night, well, big night in Florida for the president. He's 2 for 2 down there. Ron DeSantis, Governor Rick Scott, both won their primaries. DeSantis running for governor. Rick Scott is running for an important Senate seat down in Florida against Bill Nelson, who does nothing. Ed Henry, what do you got?
Well, Sean, this is a huge upset. Fox projecting right now an upset win in Florida's gubernatorial primary. Based on the latest vote returns, Fox is projecting that Andrew Gillum has won the Democratic nomination. The key here is that he is backed by socialist Bernie Sanders. This is a complete upset. He beat former Congresswoman Gwen Graham. She's the daughter of the former Florida governor and Senator Bob Graham. She's much more moderate establishment. This is a sign the Democratic Party being pulled further and further left, even in a swing state like here in Florida. It pits this Bernie Sanders-backed candidate in Andrew Gillum against, as you mentioned, Ron DeSantis, backed by President Trump. So this could be an epic clash here in the Sunshine State in November in these midterms. Gubernatorial battle. Sanders versus Trump, essentially, when you've got DeSantis, who was given no chance of winning just a few months ago, had a dramatic victory tonight against Adam Putnam, the state agriculture commissioner. The president tweeted just a few moments ago, quote, "Such a fantastic win for Ron DeSantis and the people of the great state of Florida. Ron will be a fantastic governor on to November." Look at how pivotal the support was by the president. In mid-June, Mason-Dixon polling had Putnam beating DeSantis by 15 points. A week later, the president sends out a tweet, one tweet, endorsing Ron DeSantis. All of a sudden, the numbers completely flip. Santis in mid-July was up by 12 points. So that's a 27-point swing, Sean. And all of a sudden, DeSantis tonight wins, not just wins, wins big. On the Republican side for governor, you mentioned Rick Scott, who is leaving office as governor. He has easily won the Republican primary to face Bill Nelson, the Democratic senator. He may be in a lot more trouble than Democrats first thought. Nelson in this battle against Governor Scott, now running for Senate. And then again, in this gubernatorial race, I can't stress what a big upset this is that Andrew Gillum, the mayor of Tallahassee, would be the first African-American governor, if he wins in Florida, by the way, Sean, backed by Bernie Sanders. That was his big endorsement. Sanders versus Trump in the Florida governor's race.
All right, Ed Henry, big report tonight. Big news. And we saw the DeSantis rise, and it was connected directly to the Trump endorsement, and he's well liked down in Florida. He'll be a good governor. Rick Scott will be a great senator. All right, and today, disgraced DOJ official Bruce Orr testifying on Capitol Hill behind closed doors. Fox News chief intelligence correspondent, our own Catherine Herridge. She has the latest from Washington now. Catherine.
Thanks, Sean. Good evening. The closed-door deposition lasted 7 hours with a consensus among Republican lawmakers. The Justice Department official Bruce Orr told the FBI there were issues with the Trump dossier and its author, former British spy Christopher Steele. But the evidence suggests the National Security Court, or FISA court, was kept in the dark when it granted a surveillance warrant for a Trump campaign aide just 2 weeks before the 2016 election. One lawmaker said Orr's answers about the timing and handling of the dossier do not line up with other witnesses, including former FBI lawyer Lisa Page, who sent anti-Trump texts, and Glenn Simpson, who testified on the Hill last December. His firm, Fusion GPS, was paid by the DNC and Clinton campaign for the anti-Trump research. With more than 2 decades of government experience, Orr's portfolio at the Justice Department was gangs and drugs, not Russia. But in 2016, documents show Orr became the back channel between the FBI officials and Steele after the Bureau fired him as a confidential source. Earlier today, Orr ignored my questions.
Mr. Orr, who authorized your contact with the FBI? Mr. Orr, were you acting alone, or did you have authority from a Justice Department official? How did your wife benefit from the dossier contract? Did you have a conflict of interest? Mr. Orr, will you take our questions?
Lawmakers say Orr had a conflict because his wife Nellie worked for Fusion GPS and did the Russia research. Those inside the closed-door deposition told Fox that they saw no Democratic lawmakers participating in the questioning today. They left that to their staff and lawyers, Sean.
All right. Thanks. Great work, Catherine Herridge, as always, joining us now with more reaction to today's breaking news. He is the author of the 3 weeks in a row #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax, Way Ahead of the Curve, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton, Frame Donald Trump, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Fox News investigative reporter and contributor Sarah Carter. Sarah, let's stay on this, then we'll get the background from Greg. We'll do it backwards. And that is, he never testified, never was called to testify before Robert Mueller, who Robert Mueller cares more about loan applications and taxi cab medallions. And we've got real evidence that FISA courts were lied to. It is irrefutable and incontrovertible. We've known for a long time. This blows it out of the water. The courts were lied to repeatedly. Anybody that signed those warrants signed on to what they knew was a knowing lie. That means Comey and Yates and Rod Rosenstein. They they lied and put a fraud on the court, not once, but 4 times, using phony Clinton bought and paid for Russian lies.
Sean, the sources that I've spoken to today that were privy to the testimony that Bruce Orr gave said what they learned showed that what the FBI did and the DOJ was so unacceptable and absolutely inexcusable. One of the things that Bruce Orr did discuss, some of the questions there that Catherine was throwing out, was that he had not informed his superiors at the DOJ that he was providing this backdoor channel for Christopher Steele. Another really interesting point, I thought,
but
that
Sarah,
he
did tell FBI officials. And
that's right.
Didn't his boss, James Comey, sign off on the first FISA warrant?
That's absolutely correct. And he did discuss with former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was fired for lying. He discussed this with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, which was really fascinating because Lisa Page played down her communications with Bruce Orr, but she was actually, according to Orr, part of his circle, part of the people that he was discussing this with at the FBI. I think that's highly significant. And the fact, Sean, that they withheld all of that is evidence, withheld all of that evidence from the secret court, the top court in the land, is absolutely inexcusable to the sources I've been talking to, and it's very, very damaging.
Let me go to Greg. Your piece today is phenomenal. Because you really give the whole history. You lay a great foundation onto this. But I want to get to this because you have Bruce Orr saying today that he understood this could never be used in a court of law. Okay, but it was used as the bulk of information for the FISA court applications. Now, if he understood that, and I guess his wife understood, then why was he still trying to reach 65 pages of notes, text, emails, messages, hope the firewalls hold, I hope we don't get exposed? It's now beginning to come together that this was a broad conspiracy to defraud the FISA court and to really take down Donald Trump. This is not a game anymore.
So essentially, the title of my book and everything that came out today corroborates what's in my book. In fact, it's worse. We learned today that James Comey's FBI was far more corrupt than we ever knew. We already knew they used a false document from a liar they fired, but today we learned that Bruce Orr told Comey and his Confederates that this is a guy, Christopher Steele, who had said he was desperate to stop Donald Trump. He was virulently anti-Trump. They should have stopped right there in their tracks, said goodbye to Steele, thrown his dossier in the garbage, but they didn't care. They moved ahead to launch this dilating investigation of Trump to damage him and to spy on a Trump associate. These people should be prosecuted for obstruction of justice, for perjury, abuse of power, and about 3 other felonies I can think of. The law enforcers became the lawbreakers. And where's the FISA court? Why aren't these judges holding these people in criminal contempt? Why isn't Jeff Sessions moving swiftly to prosecute these people with indictments?
Orr is admitting today, Greg, he's admitting that we already knew that Steele didn't even stand by his own dossier. That was in your column today. We mentioned it many times. Oh, no, I don't know if any of this is true. But he was desperate that Trump not get elected, passionate about him not being president. But they still used it.
Yes.
That's the point.
Oh, it's a fraud on the court to use it that way.
Isn't that a crime, Greg? Could you get me out of jail for that?
It's a myriad. It's 6 different felonies, as I outline in my book.
And it's a fraud based on Russian lies bought and paid for by Hillary.
And they knew they were going to get caught, which is why they continued to try to verify the dossier. Even after they used it, they were trying to cure their illegal conduct.
By the way, and didn't Rod Rosenstein sign off on the 3rd renewal application, Sarah?
So that explains why Rosenstein is knee-deep in obstructing Congress by withholding documents.
Sarah.
Sean, look at this. They used the dossier, not only through the court system, they withheld that information, but then later, James Clapper, John Brennan, the briefing that they gave to then President-elect Trump, where we know the information from the dossier was then leaked to CNN, suspectedly by Clapper himself, according to congressional members that are investigating this. So not only did they know the dossier wasn't valid, but they continued to use the dossier to pump out disinformation on President-elect Trump and President Trump. This is serious. These are serious crimes to the FISC court. And what they have done is present a disinformation campaign against an administration where the only people that appear to have been collaborating with the Russians were the people that were involved in this. Fusion GPS, the Hillary Clinton campaign, and all the other people that were involved in collecting information.
All right, guys, great work tonight, both of you. Both your articles on Hannity.com, FoxNews.com, SarahACarter.com. We have a lot of news this week. Pretty amazing day. Thank you both. When we come back, Joe DeGenova, Mark Penn on Alan Dershowitz's warning Robert Mueller's gearing up to subpoena Donald Trump. That and more straight ahead. Earlier today, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz said that he believes that Robert Mueller is, quote, gearing up to subpoena the President of the United States. Here now with reaction, former Clinton pollster Mark Penn and former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Joe DeGenova. Full disclosure, yes, he's done some legal work for me. He's very expensive, but he's really worth it. Him and Victoria, two of the best lawyers in the country. And he did come to my Christmas party. Mark Penn will be invited next year. I'm watching all the developments today. And I think probably Dershowitz is right. I think Mueller wants to do it. He's following taxi cab medallions and loan applications. We've got FISA courts literally lied to with Russian propaganda. The American people, Russian lies perpetrated in this last election cycle. He has no interest in any of this. Can you believe we learned today that Bruce Orr was never called before Mueller? Mueller's not serious about any real Russia collusion. Joe DeGenova?
What we know is that Bruce Orr also, we just learned, was not interviewed by Mr. Huber out in Utah, who allegedly is investigating all of the FISA abuse and the unmasking. Sean, if Mr. Mueller wants to subpoena the president, he can certainly try, but he's going to lose, and the reason is very simple. The special counsel has already interviewed the president's lawyer, Mr. McGahn, for 30 hours. Anything that he learned from him, that's the president's knowledge. The president, therefore, under the law, is not readily available. He's under no obligation to testify. And if Mr. Mueller pursues a subpoena, he's going to lose it in the Supreme Court because he already has all the information he needs. And then there's one more very important thing. He's using the grand jury for impeachment. That's an unconstitutional use of the grand jury, and that's another reason he's going to lose. You cannot use grand jury subpoenas to get testimony.
So what he'll do, Joe, is in 70 days from now, we know that we're going to have an election. In my opinion, what Mueller's going to do is he's going to write a roadmap for the Democratic Party to impeach President Trump. True or false?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is an impeachment investigation as far as it concerns the President of the United States. And any notion that it was designed to get at illegality concerning the entire campaign is a falsehood. Not only is Mueller not investigating it, but it's clear now that the Department of Justice under Rosenstein and Sessions is not investigating the unmasking or the leaks from the grand jury or anything else or the leaks of classified information involving the president. Jeff Sessions and Rosenstein have now abandoned all semblance of respectability. This is truly disgraceful.
And the president, politically, if he fires them, I can hear the comparison, Saturday Night Massacre.
He doesn't have to fire them now. It's not going to make any difference because the damage that they have done to the presidency over 18 months has actually made him stronger.
Harm.
But let me just say this. This president will survive this. And when the midterms are over, Mr. Sessions and Mr. Rosenstein will be gone.
Mark, I know you come at this a little bit different from me politically, but you see the wide range. How did we go from what was supposed to be collusion, and we have evidence of real collusion that we've blown wide open, and FISA court judges lied to, and omissions on purpose, and even information they were fed from Russia that turned out to be lies. That's not discussed. People care more about, loan applications.
Well, look, my fear all along was that this would be 1998 all over again, where we wasted a year of our nation on something that we then decided was of no consequence. And again, the same thing is happening as this investigation has morphed, not from Whitewater, but from Russia collusion to Cohn to payments to Stormy Daniels.
Well,
it's
at least Ken
exactly
Starr
the
got
same
some
thing.
convictions with Webb Hubbell, et cetera. There was some connection to the original mandate.
True. True, there was connection to the original. And remember, we made the decision to testify before the grand jury, and my recent poll, a Harvard CAPS poll, says 60% would like President Trump just as they wanted President Clinton to testify. But when President Clinton testified, what happened? He got impeached. It didn't actually do him any good.
You would tell the president then, in this case, stay away from Robert Mueller and his band of Democratic donor witch hunters.
I would say if you'd asked me 3 months ago before what's come out, I would have said, you got to testify. I think today I would say, don't testify, because there's nothing you can say that would really be new, that he would really need to write the same report that he's going to write anyway.
And we know that, let's say Don McGahn testifies for 30 hours. Whoever made that decision doesn't make sense to me, but maybe in the end it was the right one. But if the president says something that contradicts what Don McGahn said, it's the special counsel that hates Trump will decide which one they want to believe, Joe.
Well, there's no doubt whatsoever that the Mueller investigation has lost all credibility, all semblance of objectivity and fairness. It is now abundantly clear, since he is not interested in any of the violations of the law from the Obama administration, DOJ, and FBI, since Bruce Ohr hasn't even been interviewed by him, it's very, very obvious that Mueller's is a get Trump operation, impeach Trump operation, and therefore it is completely out of control and is entitled to no respect whatsoever.
Last word, Mark Penn.
Look, I think there's no question that if the Democrats win, right now we're headed for the same thing in 1998, and I wish we could avoid it by getting to the bottom of what really happened to the FBI and CIA and blow this thing over.
I know how we can avoid it. Don't vote for Democrats, because that's what their agenda is.
I'm not going to agree with you on that one, Sean. But let's vote.
They want to impeach.
Let's vote for
nothing
Democrats.
in there. There's nothing that they want to do that's going to help the men and women of this country. They want their crumbs back. They want open borders. They want to keep Obamacare, and they want to impeach the president and end the investigation into the biggest abuse of power ever. Not a good scenario. Not going to help anybody.
I want to see some moderate Democrats, Sean.
That's all right. We still like you. When we come back, Ari Fleischer, Dan Bongino, they'll weigh in on CNN fake news botched report on Trump-Russia collusion. Stay with us.